I know I promised another South Park video, but psych! You will watch Duck Iceberg now. I'm sure you're familiar with the whole iceberg video thing. We all love the Mario 64 one. Also, I'm not sure if an iceberg already exists on this topic. I doubt it. So I just made one myself. Figured it would be a fun video to do. A bit of a lighter excursion after the two massive deep dives we just did. So without any more intro because I'm a lazy writer, let's start the iceberg. Let's begin with some of the more obvious ones. There's only a few. The average size of a duck is approximately 5.1 to 5.6 inches, but admittedly it could be closer to 6 inches if you're in the Western world. Depends on who you ask. Girth is typically around 4.5 inches, much less thicker than a Coke can. I saw some confusion on that in the duck size video comments section. Keep in mind that a duck is never a perfect cylinder. Also, I just measured this root beer can, almost 9 inches around, so it's literally half. Just wanted to clear that up. Also in the duck size video, we talked about Dingle number 1 and Dangle number 2, Jonah Falcon and Cabrera. One of them is a clout chaser, and the other one is mostly foreskin. We won't go too much into detail on them, but they're the two most prominent figures when you Google search for world record meat sword. They claim sizes of 13.7 inches and 18.9 inches respectively. Look, I'm bad at math. I said in the last one, 18 inches was half the size of an average man. That's a foot and a half. I'm so bad at math, you guys. That's why I'm a YouTuber. Both of those sizes are most likely completely wrong. I know that's not a very satisfying answer for this topic on the iceberg, but later on, we'll get into contestant number 3, who is a little more trustworthy and a little more reasonable size. He might actually have one of the world's largest ding-dongs, for real. In any case, ducks that big are very tough to live with. Just go through the comments under that video and you'll see what I'm talking about. Morning wood is when you wake up and you suddenly have an erection. Scientists believe this can happen for a few reasons: hormone shifts, brain relaxation, and of course, accidental physical touch. Someone brushes against your leg in bed and oops. I'd love to hear what women think about this topic in particular, because the way people describe what morning wood is, it might be something kind of bizarre to a lot of women. But for guys, it's so common, it's not even really that weird or talked about. Like, you understand from such a young age that this happens that you don't even question it. So I'd be curious to hear what the women think about this phenomenon. So wet dreams are what happens when ejaculation occurs during sleep. Also referred to as nocturnal emissions. These are typically caused by dreams about sex, even if you don't remember the dream. But they can also happen randomly as a way for the body to eject a substance when it gets built up. It's completely normal. This can even happen to women too, where they orgasm during their sleep, although it's not as common. So this one's a bit weird, and I had no idea about this. It's actually a common thing for babies to be born full mast. According to a study from 1991, it is old, but I did really read into it. It looks pretty reliable. Fetal erections most commonly occur during REM sleep, and they can happen a number of times each hour. No one is quite sure why this happens, but it might be the body's way of testing things out and keeping them running correctly. So it's just a way for the body to test that everything is working properly and, again, completely normal. No, this is not the name of the Has-Been Hotel character. Angel lust is the phenomenon where a corpse will get an erection. This typically happens moments after death. Most commonly, it occurs in people who have died from hanging. Scientists believe that it may be due to pressure from the noose on the cerebellum. However, it has also been reported following death by a gunshot wound to the head, damage to major blood vessels, and poisoning. Another theory is that the erection is caused by the brutal destruction of the cervical spinal cord. This brings up the interesting question: Who's the first guy who discovered that a corpse can get an erection? And why was he checking? Looking for an erection on a dead body? Kinda sus, bro. Have you eaten your Wheaties today? No? Oh, well then you must be a serial masturbator. This is one that a lot of people commonly know, and I kinda thought it was a myth because it just sounds so outrageous, but no, it's real. John Harvey Kellogg thought that cornflakes would prevent you from committing the evil sin of self-pleasuring. Self-pleasuring is not an evil sin, by the way, but that's how America worked back in the day, I guess. And no, it doesn't work. It doesn't make you go blind either, says this article that I'm reading from. Wait, cornflakes or masturbation makes you go blind? Maybe it's both together, the forbidden combination. We also covered this in the duck size video. Basically, among men, there is no consistent relationship found between the size of your flaccid duck and the size of your erect duck. In one study of 80 men, researchers found that increases from flaccid to erect lengths ranged wildly from less than a quarter inch to 3.5 inches longer. Whatever the clinical significance of these data may be, the locker room significance is considerable. You just can't assume that a dude with a big, limp one gets much bigger when he gets hard. You really have no clue what it's gonna do. And a guy whose member might look very small flaccid might end up being bigger than the shower who already had a big flaccid one. You see what I mean? It's a matter of ratios, not inches. An analysis of more than 1,000 measurements taken by sex researcher Alfred Kinsey shows that shorter flaccid ducks tend to gain about twice as much length as longer flaccid ducks. You do hear of a few cases where someone who's already big becomes a lot bigger, but it's more common for smaller guys to be growers and bigger guys to be showers. So basically it sounds like God may have somewhat nerfed the big swingers, but the data is not consistent enough to draw huge determining patterns. Erectile dysfunction is the inability to develop and maintain an erection that is sufficiently firm for satisfactory sexual performance. You can't get hard, or you have trouble getting hard. Diabetes is a leading cause, as is natural aging. This is where medications such as Viagra comes in, the V pill. They can aid with erectile dysfunction. If you're out there and you're experiencing this, it is a very common thing, so you really shouldn't feel bad. Like I said, natural aging is a big factor in this, and sometimes it just happens. But you shouldn't feel bad because your duck is not the only tool that you can use during sex, especially if you're with someone who's more experienced. Using your mouth and hands can actually go a long way. Duck envy is the contested Freudian belief that all women inherently envy men for having ducks. They want one themselves, which is what Freud thinks, and it's kind of stupid. I don't need to tell you how dumb that sounds. I mean, I'm sure there are some out there that are curious, maybe wish they had one, but I don't think it's a super common thing. But maybe I'm wrong. Tell me in the comments. I don't know. I think this is something that's been willfully unattended to in the world of duck research. This one's pretty well known, but it's not as much of a big of a deal as you think. There is a link between smoking and constricted blood flow to your member. Whoa. Which can make it appear ever so slightly smaller when flaccid. But while there may not be a huge impact on size, there is a noticeable impact on ED, erectile dysfunction. This article breaks it down pretty well. Smoking can lead to reduced blood flow throughout the body, including to the duck, which can make it difficult to achieve and maintain an erection. The chemicals in cigarettes can also cause damage to the nerves that are responsible for triggering an erection, making it harder to achieve and sustain one. Smoking can also disrupt hormone levels in the body, which can impact sexual functioning and may contribute to erectile dysfunction. By understanding the impact of smoking on erectile function, individuals can make more informed decisions about their smoking habits and take steps to improve their overall sexual health. There are a lot of reasons to quit smoking, and this is just a drop in the bucket of all of those reasons. The following figure may surprise you. Worldwide, only about 37 to 39% of males aged 15 and older are circumcised, according to a 2016 report published in Population Health Metrics. Rates vary greatly depending on religion and nationality. Almost all Jewish and Muslim males in the world have circumcised ducks. and together they account for almost 70% of all circumcised males globally. There is some research that shows that there may be health benefits from circumcision. For instance, circumcised men may be less likely to pass STIs and STDs to their female partners or to develop penile cancer, which is a very scary thing that we'll talk about a little farther down. Despite its goofy-ass name, duck panic can be terrifying. It is a very real delusion of shrinkage of the dong and retraction into the body. This appears to be culturally conditioned and largely limited to countries such as Ghana, Sudan, Japan, Southeast Asia, and West Africa. Now, this one is actually really crazy. There are efforts by scientists to partially or fully regenerate the structures of someone's duck. Yes, you heard that right. We've made some serious progress on penile regeneration. Patients who can benefit most from this field are those who have congenital defects, cancer, and injuries that have excised parts of their genitalia. It is related to a procedure called allotransplantation, but we'll cover that in more detail later on. This is an unfortunate thing that does happen from time to time. It's pretty much as it sounds. Sometimes, a circumcision is incorrectly performed, leading to certain complications. Redundant foreskin is one of the most frequently corrected issues after initial circumcision. In the flaccid duck, part of the foreskin may still cover the glands. Where insufficient skin is removed, it can rub, develop excess scar tissue, and over time may develop into phimosis. Phimosis is a future topic on the iceberg. A buried duck might result in unsatisfactory cosmetic appearance, voiding problems, and sexual dysfunction. The duck itself is of normal size, but its outward profile is obscured. It occurs due to an overabundance of subcutaneous tissue and/or fat in the prepubic area. So, a lot of tissue down there, and it's covering up the majority of the duck. Doctors assess sexual function, including erectile dysfunction, erectile discomfort, and penetration difficulty during intercourse. There are other types of complications that come from botched circumcisions, but these are the most common. Some of you may have heard of this one before, and yes, it is true. At one point in time, the male duck had spines going up and down the shaft, but human ancestors lost these prickly structures before Neanderthals and modern humans diverged some 700,000 years ago, according to a 2010 study published in the journal Nature. Scientists aren't exactly clear on the function of those spines, but some propose that they allowed for quickies because they can create an erection quickly and are more common in promiscuous species, such as cats. Tomcats have rather terrifying spines on their ding-dongs. Can you imagine that? Call me the potato chip because I give you that extra crunch. We didn't just have spines, though. We also had duck bones at one point. I really don't know what God was smoking when he came up with that one. Another relic of past times is the duck bone, or baculum. Though most apes have a bone to keep their member erect, human males lost theirs at some point and now rely on blood pressure for stiffness. In other animals, the duck bone sits inside the body and is pushed out into the duck for an instant, reliable erection. It's still a mystery why males lost this trait, but in The Selfish Gene, biologist Richard Dawkins proposes the bone-free duck was naturally selected because it allows females to gauge potential partners' health. Those who can't get an erection probably have poor blood flow. Hey, when I said I boned her last night, I wasn't lying. Peyronie's disease is an abnormal curve of the duck that occurs later in life. Studies suggest around 0.5 to 13% of adult males will experience PD at some point in their lives. The risk increases as a person gets older. It's mainly the result of a prior injury during sex. With that said, PD is still somewhat poorly understood and may occur for no known reason. If the symptoms of PD are severe, they can cause ED. Pudendal nerve entrapment is a condition characterized by pain on sitting and the loss of penile sensation and orgasm. Occasionally, there is a total loss of sensation and orgasm. The pudendal nerve can be damaged by narrow, hard bicycle seats and accidents, to name a few. Just be careful out there. Yes, you read that one correctly. I somehow had no idea this was a thing, but according to this article, Vibrators aren't only for women.
It's now illegal.
They work on your stick too. In fact, vibration is so effective on the duck that often men with spinal cord injuries can emission with the aid of a special medical vibrator. For this kind of treatment, the vibrator is usually held against the underside of the head of the duck. Although vibrators often help men with emission problems, you don't have to have any kind of medical condition to use one. You could just do it for fun. Well, shit, time to make a trip to the store, I guess. Many animals have super-powered ding-dongs. As you'll come to learn from this list, the echidna duck, for example, remember duck meaning dick. The echidna has 4 heads on its thing. During copulation, echidna ducks operate on a part-time schedule. Half the duck temporarily shuts completely down, while the other 2 heads are responsible for fertilization. But those extra 2 heads aren't just there to show off. Next time the echidna mates, he'll alternate which half he uses. Now I understand why Sonic was so high on Cornhub's list last year. Many men consider the underside of the glands, head of the duck, and the underside of the shaft to be the most sensitive to sexual pleasure. Researchers asked 81 healthy men to rate the erotic sensitivity of different areas of their bodies, including not only the duck, but also zones such as the scrotum, anus, nipples, and neck. There's a pretty big difference between your scrotum and your neck. The underside of the glands and underside of the shaft had the highest sensitivity rating for a significant majority of men, followed by the upper side of the glands, left and right side of the glands, the sides of the duck, upper side of the shaft, and foreskin, for the minority of men who were uncircumcised. The findings of this study were reported in the British Journal of Urology International in 2009. Now, okay. Historians disagree on this fact, but it is said that the Führer did have a micro. There's a lot to unpack there. Well, for us, not for him. This rumor likely spread because we want the guy to have a micro, right? We want it to be true because he's a historical figure that it's kind of okay to make up any rumor about because he's dead, and also we want to shit on him as much as possible. Understandably so. It hardly matters anyway, because again, he's dead. But a micro wasn't the only thing he's believed to have had. He also may have had an undescended testicle, as well as a few other complications, but you can look into those on your own time. An erection can point in virtually any direction. Straight ahead, left, right, up, down, A, B, start. There's no right or wrong. The following data comes from a study that measured 1,484 separate erections. In the figures below, if the stick pointed directly up, the measurement was 0 degrees. And if it was forward pointing, meaning horizontal, the measurement was 90 degrees. And here's the numbers. As you can see, it's a pretty wide spread across the board, and the majority of participants have a slight curve at least, with the majority pointing up somewhat. So for anyone concerned that their chap is a bit skewed, do not worry, you are normal. While we're on the topic of normality, very few ducks are straight. They can curve in any direction. A curve of up to 30 degrees is still considered healthy. This one's pretty short and simple. About half of your length is housed inside the body, where it attaches to your bodily systems. So you can't see it. So next time you feel small, you can double the number, but be sure to specify that with your partner. Hey baby, I got 11 inches. It's just inside me. And now, it will be inside of you. Fracture can occur if the erect duct is bent excessively. A popping or cracking sound and pain is normally associated with this event. Emergency medical assistance should be obtained as soon as humanly possible. Get that shit fixed up immediately, brother. Prompt medical attention lowers the likelihood of a permanent penile curvature. This usually happens because of vigorous sex. That's why you have to be careful with positions like girl on top, especially if you're longer down there. Improper dismounting can actually bend or snap your junk, so be cautious. While we're on this topic, I got a few comments pointing out how I sort of incorrectly spoke on how limiting the positions can be when you get up to bigger sizes. Like if you're 8 inches, you might not be able to do deeper penetration or standing positions, etc. And look, I didn't come up with that info right off the spot. I did use a source, but I want to make it clear that what I meant to say in that video was not that it was impossible to pull off those positions, but the bigger you get, the more difficult it is for you and for your partner, and the more careful you have to be when you pull those off. Penile fracture is one of those reasons. Improper dismounting when you are that big can lead to injury to her and to you because it can bend or even snap. So just be careful. Studies show that the duck steadily loses sensitivity as men age, though it's hard to say exactly by how much. That's because different researchers have used different ways to stimulate the duck and measure sensitivity in general. Because, it's a very awkward thing to measure, and it's very, not very well defined how sensitive someone is. You just have to ask them, basically. Sensitivity is gauged by the least amount of stimulation a man is able to feel. That's typically how it's measured. It's called the sensory threshold. So despite differences between studies, the data shows a clear trend when taken together. From age 25 onward, sensitivity starts to decline. The sharpest decline in sensitivity is seen between age 65 and 75. So even if sensitivity decreases, you still have plenty of time before it hits a sharper downward angle. What's less clear is whether men really notice this loss of sensitivity or not, because again, it is somewhat gradual. One practitioner says that if they are aware of it, his patients seldom mention it. So it may happen, but it sounds like for most men, it may not even be a perceived problem. This topic is related to duck panic, which we talked about previously. So make some popcorn and settle in while I tell you the tale of the duck snatchers. In April of 2008, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of the Congo, the West African police arrested 14 suspected victims of duck snatching and sorcerers accused of using black magic or witchcraft to disappear or shrink men's ducks to extort cash for the cure, amid a wave of panic. So basically, quote-unquote sorcerers were pretending to steal men's ducks away and then asking for payment to cure them. Arrests were made in an effort to avoid bloodshed seen in Ghana a decade before, when 12 duck snatchers were beaten to death by mobs. This is not a joke. There was a real wave of panic that swept across West Africa in the previous decade, where people were legitimately afraid their genitalia was shrinking or going to disappear completely. It is believed that this is caused by a form of mass hysteria, a psychological phenomenon where a lot of people, for whatever reason, fall victim to an outlandish belief or partake in strange behaviors. What causes mass hysteria? Groupthink, stress, and other factors are thought to be the cause of these bizarre outbreaks. Hard flaccid syndrome is a chronic and painful condition characterized by a semi-rigid duck in the flaccid state, a soft glans when erect, along with the various associated symptoms like pelvic pain, low libido, ED, and penile sensory changes. There isn't a lot of available research on this, but from what I can gather, this can be caused by traumatic injury at the base of the erect member. Basically, it seems as if nerve damage can cause the typical erection mechanisms to break down, leading to a confusion of hard, soft, and a perpetual state of in-between. Paraphimosis occurs in an uncircumcised duck when the foreskin gets stuck in the retracted position. It is a medical emergency that can lead to tissue death if not treated immediately. Basically, it can't be rolled back down, which, as you can probably imagine, can be very problematic. Similar to paraphimosis, cold gland syndrome is a condition marked by the persistent inability of the glands to maintain an erect state during sexual arousal, potentially leading to reduced sensitivity and erection difficulties. In 2009, researchers successfully created the first bioengineered duck and implanted them onto rabbits. They were able to obtain erections and actually copulate, with 10 of 12 rabbits achieving emission. This incredible study shows that in the future, it could actually be possible to produce artificial ducks for replacement surgeries or phalloplasties. We haven't seen much movement since this discovery all the way back in 2009, but the implications of it are huge. As far as I can tell, there have not yet been any successful human trials, but the fact that a mammal was able to use one successfully, pretty awesome. Ducks with complications could be incredibly sidestepped by instead growing a new one in a laboratory somewhere. I could do a whole video on this in the future because I find whatever science that is behind this to be fascinating. This is unfortunately a very real thing. Penile cancer, cancer of the duck, is very rare. However, it can be one of the more aggressive forms of cancer. Around 95% of causes are caused by a type of skin cancer called squamous cell carcinoma. The good news is, penile cancer is diagnosed in fewer than 1 per 100,000 males per year and accounts for fewer than 1% of all cancers in the United States. So it is a very rare form of cancer. An allotransplant is the transplantation of cells, tissues, or organs to a recipient from a genetically non-identical donor of the same species. Essentially, it's taking the body mass of one individual and transplanting it directly onto another individual. The first successful allotransplant surgery for a duck was done in September 2005 in a military hospital in China. A man at 44 sustained an injury after an accident and his duck was severed. Urination became difficult, as his urethra was partially blocked. A recently brain-dead man, aged 23, was selected for the transplant. Despite atrophy of blood vessels and nerves, the arteries, veins, nerves, and the corpora spongiosa were successfully matched. However, after 2 weeks, the surgery was reversed because of a severe psychological problem, meaning a rejection by the recipient and his wife. So it was successful, but eventually reversed. It looks like we've still got some work to do when it comes to complete penile transplants. The story goes here that Napoleon Bonaparte had his duck travel around the world. A 2015 article in the Washington Post cataloged the path of Bonaparte's French fry from Napoleon himself to an Italian priest, to a London bookseller, to a book dealer in Philadelphia, to a French museum in New York City. From there, after being on display for decades, it was brought in an auction in Paris in 1977 by an American urologist, whose descendants currently live in New Jersey. But while it's confirmed that this mummified thing is in fact a duck, we're not actually sure who it belongs to. Balanitis is the inflammation of the head of your duck. This is similar to posthitis, which is the inflammation of the foreskin, and balanoposthitis, which is inflammation of both. Very painful. Another famous duck haver, Russian holy man Rasputin, you know the guy, apparently had a massive ding-dong. Well, good for him. It's also been said that it possessed magical powers? Good for him? It also traveled to various places before it was examined more closely, and they found out it was actually a sea cucumber. Ah, the old 13-inch sea cucumber trick. I've tried that one before. This information comes from the highly reputable sperm.blog. All joking aside, this number is on other sites as well. According to this site and many others, sperm typically travels at speeds that can climb as high as 28 miles per hour. So now, I have a new insult to shout at the slow driver in the left lane. My sperm can drive faster than you. The numbers here can vary wildly, but from what I can tell you, and from what I can corroborate, the average male orgasm lasts for around 6 to 10 seconds, depending on your definition of where it begins and ends. For women, however, it can be significantly longer, upwards of 15 to 20 seconds, or even 30. Boys, can you imagine that? 30 entire seconds of that orgasm state. Like, holy shit, that would be awesome. We've already talked about Jonah Falcon and Cabrera and their fake phalluses, so I wanted to include this other guy who seems a little more genuine and a little more believable. Compared to their measurements of 13.7 and 18.9 inches respectively, this dude Matt has measured himself to be a slightly more reasonable 11 inches. Still, massive. He's about 7.75 inches around at the widest point, meaning he's also very thick. He may not be a true record holder, but he is certainly up there. The reasons I like and trust this guy a lot more are because, number one, the photo evidence of his bulge seems a lot more accurate to the measurement. And 2, he's been willing to share how much more of a burden a big duck is than a gift. I'm not glad he has trouble, that's not it at all. But his experience seems a little more, I don't know, genuine? Apparently he ended up giving a girl a concussion because he accidentally whacked her in the face with his dong. I mean, that seems kinda hard to believe, but if it is that big around as well, I guess it's not impossible. It's almost like a baseball bat to the face. Sex in general seems to be a real struggle for him, and more than anything, he's tired of people fetishizing big ducks, like his. He kinda just wants to have a normal life. And you know what? I feel for you, man. Obviously, it's hard to judge someone's character this way, but you seem like a nice guy, and I wish you success. If this topic seems kind of like a detour on this iceberg, that's because it kind of is. I just wanted to highlight the amount of comments I got under that duck size video about men with huge ducks, like 7, 8, and 9 inches. And also from women who had taken huge ducks like that. And almost always, if you read those comments, you'll see they almost always end with some kind of bruising, a hospital visit, or just an unhealthy stigma. Bigger guys have just as many unseen struggles as smaller guys. You know, we're not comparing who has it worse here. That's not what I'm doing. But I want to make a future video solely about really big guys, and I want to get testimonies from them about what it's like to have that. Even if your life is perfect and you can use a big duck successfully, that's great. I want to hear your experience, because I think there's a lot of unheard struggles here. Speaking of the duck size video, I wanted to include awareness of one particular comment I received. Cloacal extrophy is a birth defect that affects the urinary, digestive, and reproductive systems. It causes an inside-out bladder and organs that push through a hole in the abdomen. A child with cloacal extrophy also has divided genitals and an incomplete anus. Infants need staged corrective surgeries to treat each of these problems. This relates to the duck iceberg because of that second to last line. Corroborated by this commenter, this defect can cause genitalia that is actually divided, and you will have a massive scar that runs down the length of your shaft. Despite this condition, this particular commenter has learned to accept himself for who he is, and I think that's very admirable. It really puts it all into perspective. I've been saying that it's not about what you have, but it's about the confidence and self-love you have for yourself. If he can come to love the body he has despite his condition, so can you. There's not much to say about this dude in particular, Milton Berle. He's just another actor who apparently had a huge wang. That's it. Dolphins are known for their intelligence, promiscuity, and absurdly dexterous ducks. Whoever wrote that, I hope you got a raise. They have a prehensile ding-a-ling, meaning it can swivel, grab, and grope, much like a human hand. God, can you imagine a Gang Beasts mod, but you're controlling a dolphin penis? A prehensile duck helps males navigate the complex, labyrinth-like reproductive tracts of female dolphins. You know, girls make fun of us because we can't find the clitoris or whatever, but imagine if we were dolphins. Literally a corn maze down there. Dolphins don't just use their ducks for baby making either. Bottlenose dolphins frequently copulate for pleasure, and often with members of the same sex. Dolphin sex doesn't last very long, only about 10 seconds. But males can have emissions multiple times an hour. All very interesting. So apparently, frequent erections are important for a continued use of your ding-a-ling. You need to have erections regularly to keep your duck in shape. Quote, "It has to essentially be exercised," says Tobias Kohler, MD, assistant professor of urology at Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. To maintain a healthy tone, the smooth muscle of the duck must be periodically enriched with oxygen by the rush of blood that engorges it and makes it erect, he says. But the brain also has an automatic duck maintenance function built in. Impulses from the brain cause erections during the dreaming phase of sleep, called REM phase. It doesn't matter if you're having a hot sex dream or a zombie apocalypse nightmare, your duck gets hard during that period of the sleep cycle. This may actually explain morning wood. Frequent erections are important for a healthy duck, so it makes sense that our brain would just make time for it when we're asleep. Like, nah, it's just duck maintenance. Most people with ducks have very little control over exactly when they have emissions. This is partly because it does not involve the brain at all. The signal to have an emission comes from the spinal ejaculation generator, which, I'm sorry, that just sounds like a level in Half-Life. Dr. Freeman, you need to activate the spinal ejaculation generator.
Get your dork ass down to the test chamber or else I will shove the sample up your ass.
This region in the spinal cord coordinates the necessary functions. During intercourse, the spinal generator integrates the sensory inputs that are necessary to trigger emissions. At the time of emissions, it coordinates the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and somatic outflow to induce the two phases of emissions, i.e., the emission and expulsion. It also provides the brain with signals related to the occurrence of emissions. This is why it's hard to control your orgasm with your brain. It's because your brain isn't even in control, really. See, honey? It's not my fault. It's my spinal cord's fault. Of course, the brain does have some input into these matters. We know this because thinking about something else is a well-known way to delay the event. But the nuts and bolts of the whole operation are dealt with in the spine, rather than the brain. I'm going to combine these two together because they're heavily related. Priapism, a form of persistent genital arousal disorder, is a painful and potentially harmful medical condition in which the erect duct does not return to its flaccid state. Priapism lasting over 4 hours is a medical emergency. If you've ever heard the phrase, "If you have an erection that lasts more than 4 hours, call your doctor," this is why. The causative mechanisms are poorly understood, but involve complex neurological and vascular factors. Potential complications include ischemia, thrombosis, and impotence. Thrombosis, then, is the formation of blood clots, which, as you can imagine, a lot of that in your duct can be very problematic. If this happens to you, you should see a doctor immediately. Hypospadias is a developmental disorder where the meatus, yes, it's actually called the meatus, it's the pee hole, is positioned wrongly at birth. Some believe Hitler had a form of this. The hole is not on the end of the tip where it should be. It's in another spot, which is kind of crazy that that can happen, but it is possible. It is usually corrected by surgery. I don't know how to break this to you guys, but there's an animal out there that can actually use its duck in combat. It's a literal sword fight. Like many organisms with intriguing phalluses, flatworms that engage in duck fights are hermaphrodites. Just one example that showcases how a sex binary system fails to account for the range, fluidity, and diversity of many organisms. Some species of flatworm engage in this duel to see who can inseminate the other. Their two-headed ducks resemble tiny swords, and battles can last for up to an hour as they take turns attempting to stab each other. The winner pierces the flesh of the other flatworm and deposits their injection, something scientists refer to as traumatic insemination. Mating can be competitive, with a single flatworm fertilizing another. In other cases, like with the tiger flatworm, they can play both roles. Each flatworm gives and receives sperm from its partner. Thank God we are not flatworms. I don't want my buddy challenging me to an insemination duel. Numerous writers have claimed that LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, took inordinate pride in the size of his member and would refer to it as Jumbo. Okay, dude. Do not give your duck a name, please. The author of this article also reached out to the biographer of Lyndon Johnson, Bruce Schulman. Though stories abound, I've never seen a verifiable account of quote-unquote Jumbo. LBJ did refer often to other people's peckers though, cutting them off, throwing them in drawers, dirty jokes, etc. This may be evidence towards an obsession with dongs because of his big size, but it may also be his sense of humor. We can't really know for sure. If you remember, hypospadias is a condition in which the opening of the urethra is on the underside of the duct, rather than at the tip, so it's the underside. It is one of the most common congenital abnormalities in males. Epispadias, on the other hand, is a similar condition in which the urethra opens on the top side of the duct. Surgery is recommended for both conditions. Chordee is an abnormal curve of the duct at the time of birth. It is more common in males with hypospadias, but can also occur on its own. In adolescent and adult males, chordee is most noticeable during an erection. We talked earlier about how curves and how they're perfectly normal. This is not that. This is a more aggressive curve that requires correction. Blue whales are the biggest animals on Earth. It is no surprise then that their ducks are also the biggest. Blue whale dongs range between 8 and 10 feet with a foot-long diameter. Not girth, diameter. Each of his testes alone can weigh up to 150 pounds. And I may regret saying this, but each load can be a gallon at a time. I actually might throw up. We're moving on. So the blue whale might have the world's biggest duck, but size is relative. Barnacles have the biggest duck to body size ratio, with their genitalia being nearly 8 times their total body length. Barnacles are stuck in place for life, so they use their super long ducks to reach other nearby crustaceans, blindly depositing their emissions inside their neighbors. Like flatworms, barnacles are hermaphrodites that can fertilize others, be fertilized, or both. Earth is an amazing planet with so much diversity, but you know what's even crazier? Scientists have found that barnacle duck features change based on where they live. The barnacles in rougher waters have short, stouter ducks, while those in calmer areas have long, slender ducks. I'm not small, honey. I live in Ohio. This is the eyeless cave insect. What's special about them? They have reverse genitalia. Males of the species have a vagina-like pouch containing sperm, while females have a special duck-like organ that penetrates and vacuums up the emissions from the male. I suppose cleanup would be a lot easier then, huh? Okay, this is the one that's most interesting to me. Diphalia, or penile duplication, is the rare condition of, you guessed it, having 2 ducks. Yep, it's possible. But don't waste your third wish on a second member just yet, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows over there. Typically, diphalia comes with other complications, and both are not fully functional. Although there is one news article I found about a guy who claims to have 2 fully functional members, and can use them both at the same time. I can't find a supporting source for this one though. So for now, I'll just chalk this one up to, you probably don't want it. Now, the other side, the congenital absence of a duck is called aphalia, and it is an extremely rare condition, affecting 1 of every 30 million births. This makes it 6 times as rare as diphalia, actually, and it usually occurs with other congenital abnormalities affecting the heart or digestive tract. The cause of aphalia is unknown, and so far, fewer than 100 cases have ever been reported. Has anyone ever had to get a stunt double for their wiener? Yes, and you may know him. Willem Dafoe did have to hire a stunt double for his ding-dong. You can find multiple sources collaborating this. Willem Dafoe famously required a body double while filming the movie Antichrist, because his member was too large and too distracting. Hey, like we needed another reason to say that having a big duck isn't always a good thing. But yeah, I heard about this. I thought it was just a rumor until now. Basically, the focus of the sex scene was not supposed to be how big he was, but his duck is so massive that they couldn't film the scene without the scene coming off as, hey, look how massive this dude is. So he had to get a duck double. Bedbugs are famous for their aggressive, stabbing sex. Sometimes, overzealous males kill females with their saber-like duck in the process. Fellas, be careful when you're going down on someone. You're not supposed to stab anyone to death with your thing. Chromodorus reticulata is a type of sea slug that will eject its duck into the ocean's abyss after it's done mating. Just whoop, goodbye. But this loss doesn't mean their sex life is over. They have at least 2 more disposable member segments hidden away. As soon as 24 hours later, the slug is ready to go again with a new duck. Pretty incredible. Okay guys, these next 2 are actual not safe for work. Like, if you're eating something, put it down right now. Okay. Sometimes, ducks pose logistical challenges. That is certainly the case for the leopard slug, which is so well endowed that it has to go to extreme measures to reproduce. Mating leopard slugs dangle from branches by a shared rope of their own slime with their ducts hanging below. As hermaphrodites, these slugs inseminate each other during sex, so once the action starts, 2 ducts are on display. And their ducts are easily spotted. They're electric blue and roughly the size of the slugs themselves. The act is a messy tangle, but nothing goes to waste. Once copulation is complete, one partner consumes the slimy sex rope as a post-coitus snack. Oh, that's absolutely awful. I changed the wording to be less gross. I've never wanted to unlearn something so bad, but it's not even as bad as this last one. While there are plenty of stories about the sexual exploits of Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin, this founding father's duck was probably what killed him. Gouverneur Morris, so the legend goes, was so riddled with gonorrhea that he had to pry open his pee hole just to urinate. And he supposedly died from an infection contracted while trying to clear his pee hole with a whalebone. Okay, that's enough for now. Thank you everybody so much for watching this iceberg video. I will be on vacation by the time you see this, so the next South Park video is probably at least 2 weeks away, unfortunately, but it's a good episode, I promise. Thank you for at least 17,000 subs, I think, at this point, and thank you all for all that fan art, seriously. There's so much fan art I've gotten in the last couple weeks, and it's all incredible. You guys are incredible artists, so I will see you in a few weeks. Thanks for watching. I love you all. Good night.